Hi everyone, Coach Sipho here, and this is a shorter version of how to play chess. And it is dedicated to those who keep on telling themselves that
I cannot learn chess, it is too difficult. It can only be understood and played by geniuses.
that is not true. In this tutorial, you are going to learn how to play chess in less than 10 minutes. So without any more delays, let's dive into it. This is the chessboard and it consists of 64 squares. These are the chess pieces, and at first glance it might appear that there are many different chess pieces, and I know that a lot of people are already overwhelmed at this point looking at these many different chess pieces, but in reality there are only 6 different chess pieces. Now let's go ahead and learn more about the chess pieces. This piece with a cross on its head is called a king. This piece with a crown on its head is called a queen. This piece is called a bishop. This piece is called a knight. This piece is called a castle. And this one is called a pawn. So there are only 6 different chess pieces. All other pieces are just a duplicate of the 6 different chess pieces. Now that we know the names of these 6 different chess pieces, let's go ahead and learn how to move them. Let's start with a castle. This is a castle or a rook. It could go upwards, downwards, to the left, or to the right. And it can move as many squares as it wants. There is no limit. So sometimes it could move 1 square. Sometimes it could move from here all the way to the end of the board. It moves unlimited number of squares, but it cannot jump pieces. For example, if this rook is here, it could go all the way to this square. But if there is something on its way, let's say this knight is here, now the rook can no longer go there because it cannot jump pieces. So in this case, it can move up until this square. And of course, it cannot capture the knight because they belong to the same team. However, if it was a different color piece, let's say it was a black knight, still it cannot move all the way to that square because it cannot jump. But it has an option of capturing the knight now. So we know how to move the rook. Let's move ahead to the next piece. A bishop moves diagonal, meaning it can go that direction, that direction, that direction, or that direction. Like a rook, a bishop can move unlimited number of squares. So if the bishop is here, it can go all the way to the end. Or if it wants, it can only move 1 square or 2 squares. Like a rook, a bishop cannot jump other pieces. So if it is here, we already know that it could move all the way to that square. But if there is something on its way, now it can no longer go to that square. It can move up until here, or if it wants, it can capture the rook. So in short, a bishop moves diagonal on the same color. This is a queen. And if you know how to move a rook and a bishop, then you definitely know how to move a queen, because a queen is a combination of a rook and a bishop in one piece. Meaning if you want, you can copy a rook, you can move it like a rook, or if you want, you could move it like a bishop. It can copy a bishop. Like a rook and a bishop, a queen can move as many squares as it wants, but it cannot jump pieces. This is a king. And if you know how to move the queen, then you also know how to move the king. Because the king moves like a queen, the only difference is that even though a king can also move to any direction like a queen, The difference is that a king can only move one square at a time. Remember, we said a queen moves like a rook and the bishop, and both of these pieces can move unlimited number of squares. So also a queen can move unlimited number of squares. However, the king, even though it can move like a queen to any direction, it is limited to one square per move. So far, I'm sure you've noticed that all these pieces move in a straight line. For example, the rook would move straight up, straight down, straight sideways. And a bishop can move straight lines also, but diagonal. The queen can copy these two pieces. The king can also move in a straight line, but one square at a time. But a knight is the only chess piece that does not move in a straight line. A knight moves like L shape, capital letter L or number 7. So L shape, your L could be upside down, or your number 7 could be upside down. There is one thing in common with capital letter L and number 7. Both of them have a longer side and a shorter side. So when you move the knight, it is like you are drawing number 7 or capital letter L. Now, how long should be the longer side and how short should be the shorter side? A long side is made up of 2 squares, and a short side is made up of 1 square. So you could turn that side or you could turn that side. So when you move a knight, you move it like this, or you could turn that side. It doesn't really matter. You could start with a long side, 2 squares, and a shorter side, 1 square. Or if you want, you could start with a shorter side, 1 square, and a long side, 2 squares. As long as both shorter side and long side are there, it doesn't really matter which side you start with. In addition, a knight is the only chess piece that is able to jump other pieces, because even in real life, horses can jump. So if we have these pieces here, by the way, there's a typical mistake that a lot of players make when they start learning how to move a knight. You know now that a knight moves like L shape or number 7. 1, 2, then you turn. So a typical mistake is that most players capture all these 3 pieces. 1, 2, 3. It doesn't work like that. A knight can only capture a piece that it lands on top of. For example, when you move the knight, this is not the final square for the knight, so you don't capture this piece. This is not the final square for the knight, you don't capture it. You only capture a piece that you land on top of, a piece on the final destination of the knight. This is a pawn, and a pawn is limited to 1 square per move. A pawn cannot go backwards, it cannot go sideways, it can only go forward. 1 square at a time, forward. Meaning, you make a move, wait for the opponent to play, make another move, wait for the opponent to play, like that, until it gets to the end. If it is still on its initial starting position, it can move 2 squares. But if you want, you can also start with 1 square. So your pawn will move 1 square, 1 square, 1 square, 1 square, 1 square, until it gets to the end. When the pawn finally gets to the end of the board, it becomes a grown-up. For now, you can consider pawns as children. But when they finally get to the end of the board, they transform, they change into a bigger piece. Now, what piece do they turn into? It is all up to you. A pawn can change into any piece of your choice. You can choose any piece except for the king. One more thing about a pawn is the only chess piece that doesn't capture the same way as it moves. For example, I told you that a rook could go down, up, sideways. And if there is something standing on their way, they could capture that thing and move it out of their way. But a pawn, even though I told you that it goes forward 1 square, if there is something on its way, it cannot capture it. A pawn captures differently from the way it moves. A pawn captures like a bishop. It captures diagonal. But unlike a bishop, a pawn cannot capture something that is very far from it, since you already know that a pawn can only move 1 square at a time. So it cannot capture something very far. It can only capture something that is close to it. Congratulations, now you finally learned how to play chess. But I'm sure you've heard people when they are playing chess saying check or checkmate. If you want to learn what is a check and what is a checkmate, I recommend you watch the video above. Thanks for learning how to play chess. Now we have one more member in our team. Please help our channel grow by smashing that subscribe button and click the thumbs up. Until next week, peace.